Success?
If it doesn't work this time, we may just have to... Come on. There we go. Okay. It finally worked and
Hooray.
we're all here. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Sarah Tabor, plant scientist, and we have Dr. Eric Lofgren. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, correct me while you
You
introduce
are?
yourself.
So I'm Eric Lofgren. I'm an associate professor at Washington State University, where I study infectious diseases, including emerging infectious diseases and healthcare associated infections.
Right on. Okay, I'm going to move you closer because my phone is really quiet. It might be on its last legs. Today we learned. Welcome. So I wanted to have you here today to talk about, we have a potential source of the infection named today. And as scientists, we all have our reservations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I could just start with, when they said, oh, we think it's lettuce. I think a couple days ago they mentioned we think it's lettuce because the first step is interviewing people, because it takes a long time to do the genetic testing to trace it down with Cyclospora. And so the first test is always interviews. And a lot of people said they ate bagged lettuce. Everybody eats bagged lettuce. It's going to come up. And then Taco Bell is also a big location. The other thing is, I think they mentioned that the Taco Bell product from Taylor Farms was traced to 4 states, I think Michigan, Ohio, a couple other ones. But this outbreak started in New York, like last month.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been cooking a while now. There's been a
Yeah.
suggestion that there's been an uptick in cases since I think May.
Yeah.
So yeah, this has been going for a bit.
Yeah. So that's where my head is at, is and I think we were talking about how, like, there's probably maybe multiple cyclospora outbreaks going on right now, and they're just kind of all merging together.
Yeah.
Was it
So
you?
there
I've been talking to a lot of people, I forget.
yeah, we chatted about this a little bit. There is sort of an implicit assumption that all of these are the same outbreak, even though, like, California right now is reporting the number of cases California normally expects to have. And so you have definitely the possibility that these are concurrent outbreaks. One of the tricky parts with cyclospora, as you mentioned, is that the lab test for it takes time. Essentially, cyclospora is it's a single cell parasite instead of a bacteria or virus, so it's not really amenable to like quick culturing and things like that. And the sequencing takes a long time, so it's a bunch of there's a bunch of delays there, and then also you've got the delay in the pathogen itself, where it needs to spend some time in the environment before it's infectious. So there is a little bit of a like, okay, go back in time to 3 weeks ago and tell me what you ate in detail. Um, and with foodborne outbreaks,
Nobody
that
can remember
includes
that.
things like the condiments, or did you get shredded lettuce with that? And often the answer is, man, I don't know. And as you said, like, everyone eats lettuce. And so it's a very labor intensive and very time intensive way to try to track what's going on.
Yeah. And we have had times where at first we thought we found the culprit and it turned out to be something else. So
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you are immunocompromised, don't think, okay, just don't eat bagged lettuce from that one place and we'll be good. There might be more going on. It's a good time to cook your veggies in general. Um, I guess it's a good time to mention, how do you avoid cyclospora? If you have any thoughts, I'm pretty sure it's just cooking.
Yeah. So it's pretty much just cooking.
Mhm.
Cyclospora is pretty resistant to disinfectants, which is one of the reasons it's a problem. Another one of the sort of big GI pathogens, norovirus, is similarly
Mhm.
pretty resistant to decontamination. There's always, washing and peeling and doing those things. But at the end of the day, cook it is usually the best way to avoid a pathogen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the spores are kind of sticky. They hang on to things. Their goal is
Yeah.
to get eaten, so they kind of drip. They want to stick onto things. So, like, washing and rinsing, if it makes you feel better, I guess. But if you're immunocompromised or you're taking care of somebody who is, just cook it.
Yeah,
I've
I
had
think
people
that's
go
the big
like,
thing is
yeah,
like relying on with washing is the mechanical action of water running over something.
mhm,
And that works some of the time. But yeah, cooking is reliable. Heat sorts out
mhm.
most things.
Yeah, yeah, and especially because the produce that tends to carry cyclospora, it's often from berries, leafy greens, herbs. Those are the kinds of things where if you scrub them enough for the washing to really work, it's disintegrated. So, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. If you look at sort of the history of where this comes from, and you sort of look at what vegetables and fruits it goes with, it's always like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like who actually like thoroughly scrubs the basil they use, or raspberries, as you said. Like the amount of washing you'd have to do to raspberries to get them decontaminated will give you raspberry pulp anyway. So you might as well cook it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, like, I think something that kind of I work in agriculture. I'm a small farmer, and my husband is a historian, and so people talk a lot about the good old days. And also, we grew up Mormon, and so you do a lot of family history, and you get to know like which kids died of diphtheria, and so like it used to be normal to have a diarrhea season in summer. Like that just kind of used to be the norm, and that's part of why you had so many kids die under the age of 5. Was just every year there's they called it summer complaint was what they called it,
Yeah,
um, and we had to invent clean drinking water. We had to invent flush toilets. We had to invent washing your hands with that clean drinking water to get diarrhea season to stop. And I think we kind of have a mindset of like, oh, there's normal is no diarrhea, and then something bad
yeah,
must have happened to cause diarrhea. And you're like, no, normal is lots of diarrhea. And as soon
yeah.
as you
We
stop doing all those things, like any of them, it comes back.
yeah we chatted about this a little bit. Diarrhea is unfortunately sort of the default state of affairs in people, and it requires a very conscious effort to not have that be true. And that is clean water, that is hand hygiene, that is guarding our food supply. Because yeah, like if left to our own devices and absent intervention, diarrhea occurs all the time. I am also sort of a history fan, and like if you read like old accounts of military campaigns, it's like, oh cool, half the people who left with on this march have or have died of diarrhea by the time we got to the battle. Oops.
Yeah,
And so yeah, there's definitely a sort of an element of constant vigilance, in that we have created a setting where we are not constantly suffering from foodborne illness, is an act of societal will rather than something that we just sort out.
yeah. I was like, we live in Fayetteville, which is like a very heavy military community presence. And I feel like when you talk to folks who have worked in military for a while, a lot of managing military is just parenting thousands of 18 to 20-year-old guys to wash their hands so they don't give everybody diarrhea. It's like
Yep,
9/10 of Army logistics, it feels like.
yep. I have a colleague who knows me very well. When I got my PhD, gave me an Army field manual from 1912 on essentially hygiene and keeping people alive in the military. And like chapter one is like, so let's talk about digging latrines. And yeah, it's just the nature of humanity is that we're very vulnerable to gastrointestinal illness.
Yeah. Yeah, I wound up having like 3 different interviews about cyclospora today because this is when everybody was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So like, here too out
Yeah,
of
you
3,
sent out sort of a broad call, and I think everyone was like, I want to be on Sarah Tater's thing. Um,
right? Yeah, well, just live streaming the breaking news on a Friday turns out to be a pretty good way to get the word out. So,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, and someone said minor suggestion: use a bidet, not just TP. Bidets don't help unless there's soap.
yeah, yeah.
Bidets are great for installing a false sense of security. Like, oh, I feel so clean. If there wasn't soap, it's not clean.
Yep.
You might as well
Um,
just wait for everything you're getting there. But you can do it if you want. If you like your bidet, you can keep your bidet, but they're not a hygienic improvement
yeah.
in
I
any real
I
meaningful
ruined
sense.
a friend's perspective of the world by introducing him to the term fecal patina. And the notion that
What's
our
that?
whole world is just sort of covered by a very, very thin layer of poo all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I said that's why I only poop in the shower. Living on in the year 3026. um, let's see. So I guess that brings us to some people had questions about could this be spreading around in the water. Um, I'm kind of bearish on that. However, as an epidemiological modeler, you might have different thoughts. And then I think you also mentioned most of epidemiology modeling was about person to person infection, which is different from how this works. So go ahead and
Yeah,
speak to that, I guess.
sure. So for both of those, I think the the question of whether or not it's sort of waterborne is, well, maybe. So the key sort of necessary but not sufficient component of this is there's got to be human poop, and importantly, it's got to be human. We're the only sort of known reservoir for this particular parasite. So if you think back to some older E. coli outbreaks and things like that, it was attributed to like, well, there was wild pigs that ran through the field and et cetera, et cetera. This is people poop. And so then the question is, where can you get sources of fecal contamination? And one of them is sewage overflow, or surface water, which is very, very easily contaminated and is the water source for a lot of farming. It's certainly possible, but it's not. I mean, the answer is we don't know. It's not definitive. And for thinking about this, the question is really multiple things have to fail. Like you have to have human feces. You've got to have it be introduced to the environment somehow, and then it's got to hang out there. That certainly can be water, but it need not be water. There's been plenty of examples of agricultural workers who don't have access to sanitary facilities, um, incidental contamination, things like that. And so it is genuinely one of those, like, it's not just has there been flooding or things like that. Like, flooding doesn't help, but I think as you sort of alluded to when we were chatting about this, if it was just flooding, the hurricane belt would have massive outbreaks of this every year because there's flooding every year, and there's fecal coliforms and all kinds of other evidence of fecal contamination in those floodwaters. So you sort of have to have the presence of human feces, which have this parasite in the right environment, and sort of that chain of failures all happen at roughly the same time. So again, to sort of loop back to what we were talking about, um, this is sort of a thing where all GI disease is sort of a thing that we are constantly sort of, to use a gaming analogy because I'm a huge nerd, like we're rolling a saving throw constantly for do we have an outbreak, and usually something stops it, and then sometimes the luck doesn't go our way, and and we get an outbreak. The fancy science term for this is stochasticity. I'm a huge fan of essentially what if this is just bad luck that happens this time rather than another time. So yeah, there is that sort of aspect to things, that like fecal contamination is the part that you have to have. And then if that's introduced by water, sure, it's water. If it's not introduced by water, it's not. And I don't think we're at the way, like, we are just at identifying the source of this. How that source became that source is a deeper question that again requires sort of more very person intensive investigation. But yeah, one of the things that I do is I build mathematical models of infectious disease, and those primarily focus on the way infectious diseases are weird. So if you think about sort of conventional chronic diseases, if you're in a room of 10 people and one of them has chronic heart disease, that doesn't really increase your risk of having chronic heart disease. Whereas if you're in a room of 10 people and one of them has Ebola, your risk of having Ebola has suddenly gotten much, much higher. And so there's this idea that person to person transmission and what's called dependent happenings is sort of the defining feature of infectious diseases. And so that's most of what modeling focuses on. The good news with Cyclospora is that there's not really evidence of person to person transmission. Um,
Mhm.
Unlike something like norovirus, where if anyone here has preschoolers, it sort of sweeps through a household, and whoever was caring for the person who's sick is going to get sick next, et cetera, et cetera. For this, the parasite both has to spend some time in the environment. There's essentially a life stage that needs it to hang out in the environment, and then it really only gets picked up again by the consumption of contaminated food or water. So generally speaking, if multiple people are in the household are sick with this, is because they all ate the same contaminated lettuce, raspberry, basil, whatever, rather than, okay, so I got sick from taking care of you, or it's just going to work its way through our house. And so from a modeling perspective, it's not terribly interesting, which is sad.
Yeah.
But it is very interesting from a sort of system science, thinking about how our agricultural system works, how our food distribution system works, and then how all of those things intersect with public health, especially during an outbreak.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and then someone asked, so are vegetables safe? What should average consumers do? So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I feel like we're going to keep coming back to it. I'm a healthy young adult. My whole household is healthy young adults so far, thank heavens. I don't really feel like we need to change what we're doing because look, 4,000 cases is a lot. There's going to be more that come out. But it's a nation of 330 million. Most of the people eating vegetables are
Yeah. Yeah. All
if
kinds of
you're
people ate bagged lettuce today and are fine.
yeah. If you have someone in your household who's immunocompromised, if you have someone with serious health issues who cannot manage a case of so the other nice thing about this, it's just diarrhea. It's aggressive diarrhea, but it's just
Yeah.
diarrhea. There's some strains of E. coli that will give you bloody diarrhea and also nuke your kidneys. This is
Yeah.
just diarrhea. So yay. Um look at the
I mean, it is
side.
important to note that
And
nobody has died yet, and
yeah.
that's a good thing. Um,
Yeah. Uh it's really more to look at. I spoke with a guy who is a doctor who works with elderly patients with dementia, the people who are caretakers for them. If you have someone with dementia, it's already hard to keep them hydrated. You just forget to drink water. And so diarrhea in their case could be very dangerous. You get dehydrated, you get clumsy, you fall, you break a hip. That's your terminal decline. For
yeah.
a person like this can be really dangerous. For a healthy young adult, it's not fun, it's not cool, it's not like the best thing to do with your time, but it's not probably not going to kill you. So just kind of keep your own personal risk profile in mind. If you have small children, diarrhea can be very dangerous. And the thing you can do is cook your produce. I feel like every time I talk about this, someone's like, "How about wash it?" No, you got to cook it. How about vinegar? No, you got to cook it. Peel it, you got to cook it. How about fermenting and make it into pickles? You got to cook it. It's a spore. It can survive all of that stuff. You have to cook it. 158 degrees. I'm not 158 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure how long that needs to be, but I mean, we're just having Brussels sprouts, frozen peas, like kind of the normal vegetables we eat.
Yeah.
We're not really changing anything about our routine because we're not the kind of people that we need to, and we don't eat that much salad anyway. Um,
Yeah.
I swore off sprouts years ago. So,
I
yeah.
confess, being an infectious disease epidemiologist, view bagged salad with deep suspicion all of the time,
Hmm.
and sort of treat it as definitely contaminated regardless. And so, sort of, I don't particularly buy it anyway. When I do, even if it's like it's pre-washed, no, it's not. Um,
Hmm.
it pre-washed just means it's been sitting in now it's wet. So I do always wash my produce. It will help with many things. Not this. Um, but like it's an you can attempt to do it. Similarly, like I think the big thing is, and we talked about this like back to COVID era times. There was this discussion of like the risk wallet and like how much can you spend out of your risk. And if you're young and healthy and like the biggest impact for this is man, weekend was terrible. Then it's probably okay. Whereas yeah, if you are immune compromised, taking care of someone who's immune compromised, have very young children, things like that, it's probably best, especially if you're in one of the states affected, to cook your produce for a while.
Yeah, and a lot of the awareness campaign around this is just like if you get diarrhea, that is just kind of a lot, and it sticks around for a while, and maybe it goes away and then it comes back. Then you need to go to a doctor and tell them, "I think I might have cyclospora. We need to test and treat for that." Like that's really what it's about, because if you don't know that's what it is, you can just stay having diarrhea for a while. Like that's really the big
Yeah.
thing here is like if you get it, people are aware what it is and can go get treated properly.
Yeah, and it can be treated with antibiotics. There's specific antibiotics that happen to also interfere with the some of the molecular processes around folate that
Hmm.
the parasite needs. So you can be treated with those, and it goes away,
Hmm.
which
Yep.
is nice. Antibiotics rock.
Yeah. Well, I think it's again to kind of bring it back to the diarrhea season discussion. It just used to be really common for a lot of the year to just a lot of people get diarrhea. They called it summer complaint. I love with live streams you have to repeat stuff because people come in and out.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, so we kind of covered this a little bit, but it used to be normal for summer to be diarrhea season. I think someone called it hot diarrhea summer. That used to be every summer. Um, and that's one of the big reasons that people cooked all their vegetables. Like if you look at traditional cuisines, the vegetables were stir fried, they were stewed. In England, they just boiled them to death, you know. It's
yeah,
very, very traditional to cook veggies and not eat them raw. We had to invent clean drinking water, clean water to wash your hands with. We had to invent flush toilets to make it make sense to eat raw vegetables. And if any of that falls apart, then we're back to cooking time, I guess.
yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. So something that's kind of funny here. So Taco Bell's got kind of that sketchy stoner reputation. I will say, they've actually been a leader in worker protections and safety, right? Coalition of Immokalee Workers is a group that of farm workers in Florida that said, "Hey, there's slavery going on down here in the '90s with tomatoes," and they've been trying to work with farmers, like, "Hey, stop doing this to us." For the longest time, and the farmers were not budging, and so they said, "All right, we're going to go around you. We're going to talk to the brands who are buying all the tomatoes you're growing, and we're going to ask them to require you to do this right." And Yum Brands, which has KFC, Taco Bell, Domino's, Pizza Hut. So Yum Brands that owns all of those was actually one of the first companies to sign on to that. And the power of those, the downside of larger companies is, monopolies are bad, right? The upside of larger companies, if you can get a large umbrella company like that to agree to that, they can force a lot of change in the food system. So, the other thing that Taco Bell has done, the reason we were able to find this lettuce was through Taco Bell because their internal tracing was in place. And so it's just kind of funny. Um, this is like one of the funny dynamics that happens in agriculture and food systems. As a small farmer, I find that many small farmers think their poop doesn't stink, but everyone poops and everyone can get cyclospora. Whereas the larger corporations know that if they screw up, number one, they're big enough that everybody will notice and no one will feel bad for them. And so they can have internal controls that are light years beyond what other operations might be doing. And that's because of outside pressure, right? That's not because
Yeah.
everybody's like, operations are the best. That's because there's that distrust.
Yum Brands is worth
But
suing. Like
yeah, I mean, yeah,
as
it
a as
appears
a
that that
as a
lettuce is being
size.
sold in a lot of places, and we found it because Taco Bell has traceability. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think that's the thing. I am sort of unironically a fan of Taco Bell. Although I don't get the lettuce there, but that's just because I think it's gross.
Mhm,
Because I have a lettuce is supposed to be cold and everything else in tacos is supposed to be warm, so one of them must be compromised, and so
mhm,
out with the lettuce. Um, but yeah, I think it's one of those things where you have controls. It's sort of an ironic thing because one of the sort of the two big issues with sort of food contamination and widespread distribution is you have what does it mean to have something that's fresh on an industrial scale, and then
mhm,
also but we can put those controls in place. So we've seen with other things, it's a very old study now, but I encountered it back when I was in undergraduate, that they had done a study on sort of bacterial contamination in butcher shops. And does your small town butcher have a cleaner surface than supermarkets? And the answer is no, because there's not a centralized system that sort of makes sure everybody's trained and accounted for and can do inspections and things like that. So there's sort of good sides and bad sides to, unfortunately, industrial food distribution. One of the things we are seeing is with things like this is that when you do get contamination, it is very widespread very quickly because you are sending lettuce to various points of consumption, including but not limited to Taco Bell, all over a number of states. Whereas if you're buying, if you're a restaurant that buys from its local farmers market, the contamination from that local farm will only impact whoever went to your particular restaurant on that particular day. And so it sort of has a less noticeable impact where you'll get a really strong signal that will send the CDC and state health departments out looking for it.
yeah. Yeah, I think, we kind of have this idea that small farms are inherently safe because you never hear about a small farm hurting people on the news, except the raw milk people are doing their best to change that. That's starting to happen. But,
Yeah.
like, um and that's because as a small farm, even if you're disgusting, you just can't make enough people sick to show up on the news.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like, as a small farmer, that's led some of us to kind of go like, we're harmless and we're perfect and everything we do is fine. The reality is everyone poops. Just because you're not getting on the news with it does not mean you're doing the right thing. Um, it just, I don't know. There's some farmers I work with around here. One was a rancher, and I was getting into starting to do some vegetables. They're like, "Oh, that's a good idea. We should grow some vegetables too, diversify our ranch." But it's a cattle ranch, and so there's nowhere they can be growing these leafy greens that's away from the cattle. And I was like, like,
Perhaps not.
yeah,
um
Yeah, it was just a trial run. They just took it home to eat it
Yeah.
themselves, and then it kind of got eaten up by weeds, so it didn't really go
Yeah.
anywhere. But I was just kind of like, oh boy, that's gonna end badly.
But yeah, it's definitely a thing because when we think about how do you actually detect an outbreak, what
Mhm,
has to happen is somebody looking at a data stream at a national, state, or local public health agency sort of has to go, well, that's weird,
mhm,
and then start the process of tracking it down. And if you think about sort of how this happens, a lot of the cases of this aren't reported,
mhm,
simply because a lot of people have a couple very bad days.
mhm,
They say they have the stomach flu, which is not a thing, but it's what we call it.
mhm,
And then they go back to their lives and they never really report it. And so
mhm,
if you think about, yeah, like a small scale contamination at a farm or something, especially with something like this, where you'd have to think back to what was I eating a week ago? And was it, the fresh basil that was chopped into pesto? Or is the raspberries in the salad or the salad in the salad? Um, you're not ever going to be able to really trace that back or even know that you should be tracing that back. And
mhm,
so you don't necessarily see that same level of sort of vigilance because it's just hard to detect. And so there are
mhm,
probably minor, very small self limiting outbreaks of this generated from small farms all the time. And we just
mhm.
don't know.
Yeah, I just like I tell folks to imagine like, okay, think of all the times you've had the runs. How many times did you go to the doctor about it?
Yeah.
And so that's how much of this can go under the radar. So that's fun. So like, yeah, just imagine how many people you have to get sick at once just to get noticed. Never mind make it on
Yeah.
the news. So.
Because doing an outbreak investigation like this, and I think that's a really important point to make, is incredibly labor intensive. You
Mhm,
do have to go interview all of these people. If you're talking about contamination, like once we figured out the site of this, how did this happen? It involves like roaming around this farm trying to find out, okay, where do they get their water? What was that water source contaminated by? If it was, where do the workers in their farm use the restroom? Are the hygiene facilities there? Are the hygiene
mhm,
facilities themselves like, is the water at the hygiene facility they're washing their hands with clean? Um, is there soap? All of those things you have to actually like go and see, and that's
mhm,
incredibly labor intensive and time
mhm.
intensive.
Yeah, it's crazy. I used to do food safety audits, which is, just one day a year you go to the farm and go like, "Do you have bathrooms? Do the toilets flush? Is there a place to wash your hands? Is it hooked up to water?" Because, out
Yeah,
on the like, I think we have indoor plumbing and functioning bathrooms in developed countries. They're so ubiquitous that we forget how much of a pain it is to put them together. And so imagine just trying to run a functioning bathroom out in a field somewhere. Um, it's kind of a lot. There's a lot of places where it can break down.
yeah.
And
Do you have enough of them?
yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, do you have enough bathrooms for your number of workers? Is
Yeah.
it close enough that if you need to use the restroom, you can make it? Are all really, really actually technically difficult questions.
Yeah. It's just the amount of time I spent just sticking my head into porta potties going like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's what's going on with when they've been able to track down a source for real, it's almost always lack of hygiene provisions on the farm for workers. Flooding is an option, like that could be, but like if that's where cyclospora outbreaks came from, the South would have one every time there was a hurricane.
yeah,
You know, um, I always just kind of come back to like if your first thought is anything besides farm workers were not given bathrooms and had to make do. If you're thinking anything besides that, you're overthinking it. Like you need to have evidence it was something else. Like before you jump to something else. And some of that can be like maliciousness and cutting corners and like I don't think they need real bathrooms. But a lot of it, honestly, is just that farms are usually run by dudes and they're not thinking like, and now we need accommodations. Because by the time you have a big crew going into harvest somewhere, you're almost thinking more like event planning than you are like harvest logistics. You're like, we're having this many people over, and we're going to need this many drinks and bathrooms. Like, you're almost kind of in party planning mindset more than
yeah.
anything else. And if you have not been brought up in a way where you're supposed to think about that, it's really easy to just fall off the deck. And I think that's a decent amount of it. Again, kind of the military logistics thing. Like 9/10 of military logistics is getting 18-year-olds to wash their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if those things are there, are they being used? Like it is hard to get people to wash their hands, frustratingly so.
Mhm. Yeah.
Everything from 18-year-old army recruits to surgeons. There is a like, please wash your hands. That's all we ask.
Yeah, yeah, it's not easy. So there's just so many places it can fall down. So I'm seeing like, you know, folks have so many questions, like there's conspiratorial thinking around it, like it's a plot, or it's because of this one government decision that was made. It's because diarrhea is normal. Diarrhea is the
Yep.
default. And anytime we stop doing any of the thousands of things it takes to keep diarrhea from happening, it comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The consequences of our sort of current political environment, I think, are that the agencies that would respond to this are understaffed.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, this is very, very labor intensive. And so
Hmm.
everybody from the national level on down are sort of stretched to the breaking point. And local public health is never well funded. If you
Hmm.
look into, your local like county public health office, there's a lot of people wearing multiple hats, and the person doing restaurant inspections and outbreak investigations and seatbelt checks for car seats are all the same person.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have the resources they need to really really come down on this swiftly. I remember at some point during COVID, I had emailed our local public health department like, "Hey, do you need any help dealing with like vaccination thing for COVID or something?" And their answer was, "Look, we've got the state fair next week, and that or the county fair next week, and that's a bigger problem for us right now than COVID is, just because turkey legs and salad
Yeah.
and uncooked things."
Yeah.
Um, and so like a
It's
lot
the
of it is
rickety
just
roller
that.
coasters of food. Yeah.
Yeah, the rickety roller coasters of food. Yeah, the basically assembled by the same people potentially. And again, like, does your fairground have hygiene facilities? And so I think a lot of it is just the resource constraints that everyone is operating under are very difficult
Mhm.
and really really quite challenging to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. Um, let's see. Someone asked, "Will alcohol-based hand sanitizer get rid of cyclospora?" Nope, it's a spore. The alcohol cannot get in there.
Yeah.
Cooking and washing your hand, like because soap and water can remove it from your hands. Um, but also,
Yeah,
like
one of
unless
the
you're
things
licking your hands.
with alcohol-based hand sanitizer is you are genuinely relying on the alcohol to kill the thing. And cyclospora is a spore, and so it's pretty resistant to it. And so what you lose when you go from alcohol-based hand sanitizers from soap and water is the mechanical scrubbing action. And soap is also awesome. And so yeah, soap and water helps a lot.
Yeah. So even on the farm, when we are doing the bathroom checks, we're like, hand sanitizer is nice, but you have to have soap and water, and the water has to be clean because it's not the same.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, washing your hands is not about killing the spores, it's just about getting them off your hands, which is also why on your hand washing facilities on the farm, the water after you wash your hands has to go in a catch basin. You can't just spill it on the ground because then whatever was on your hands is just right back on the farm.
It's now just hanging out on the ground.
Hmm. Yep, yep. Um, so that's good stuff. I'm trying to think. We've kind of covered a lot of ground here. I'm trying to think if there's anything that you want to talk about that we haven't gotten into yet. Because I know it took us a while to get the live stream set up. I don't want to eat up your entire day. We're kind of starting to
That's
hit an
all
hour from when
good.
we were starting.
I think really it's just both to think about this as a potential risk to you, and sort of make a judgment call, but also don't panic and stop eating vegetables. Vegetables are good for you. Just if you're in one of the infected states, if you're someone who's concerned about this because of your own or someone who you're caring for's healthcare or health status, cook your vegetables as much as is possible. If it can't be cooked, it definitely just at bare minimum needs to be washed.
Mhm.
But know that that is a risk. Um, to answer some questions that just popped up, um, spore in this case just means essentially armored cell. So it's not really airborne. It's in the soil or it can be carried by water, and they can survive for a while. Um, so yeah, I think it's definitely something that keep in mind, and that this is a thing that doesn't just happen now. There's a lot of like, why is this happening now, etc. We get outbreaks of this a lot.
Mhm.
Most commonly uh, are indeed lettuce.
Mhm.
Basil had a run of bad luck for a while because again, it's hard to wash. Nobody like thoroughly scrubs the basil, and then like it goes into pesto sauce and isn't cooked. And raspberries because again, you can't like the raspberries I grow in my garden. I wash in that they go in a bowl of water and get sort of submerged and then spun around a little bit. But more than that's going to destroy perfectly good raspberries.
Yeah. I
So
mean, you look at
there's
them
sort of a
funny and they
run of
melt, you
those.
know?
Yeah, yeah. Like half the time I pick them and they're dead by the time I get them off their little cone things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like caution is warranted, but this is you know as far as infectious diseases go, this one is a bummer. But it is by and large, it's not deadly. No one has died from this. There are foodborne contaminants, as you mentioned, sort of E. coli and salmonella and some other sort of rarer ones. They can genuinely cause kidney failure and things like that are quite scary. This one is for especially for healthy people a bad couple days. Um,
Mhm.
and so like keep that in mind as you think about this.
Yeah, exactly. And then let's see. Oh, somebody asked, "Will freeze and kill it?" Nope, just cooking. Uh, UV also. I don't know about that. Yeah,
There's been some suggestions that it might be able to, but like
I
we
wouldn't
don't
count on it.
really irradiate bagged lettuce.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. The darn thing about UV is it's light, and so if
Yeah,
there's a shadow, it's not working.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. The problem with UV is shadows exist. So
Mhm.
like if we had some sort of single piece of lettuce 360 conveyor system that we could irradiate it with, great.
Yeah,
But other than that, not really.
yeah. The only thing that UV really works on for decontaminating food is transparent juices. Like there's a reason that's the only thing you see treated with
Yeah,
UV is because it has to be see through. Um, let's see. We should
I'm
we
an
should talk a little bit about. I feel like folks have been going like, "Wow, the CDC is really behind on this." The CDC is not really in charge of investigating foodborne illness outbreaks. That's more the FDA. So this, and you can correct me if you know more about this. My understanding is the CDC is mostly there as a library because the main folks actually investigating it are the state health departments, and then they'll work with FDA to kind of cross state borders when they need to. But CDC is just kind of there as a library to hold information when people need it. CDC is not actively tracking the investigation. That's part of why they're behind the numbers. They're just collecting them from state health departments, and that takes a minute.
So the CDC can be involved in a couple different ways. There's what's known as the Epidemic Intelligence Service, which are the super cool disease detective types at the CDC. That are many of them are either embedded at state health departments or you can essentially request help. Um, and there are some sort of food borne investigation units because this one is a parasite. It's being handled at the CDC by a different group, and that group is much smaller than it used to be,
Mhm.
um, due to sort of our current state of funding and support in public health. And so yeah, the CDC is behind. Similarly, FoodNet. I've seen it mentioned a lot that like FoodNet, which is the CDC's reporting service for a number of foodborne illnesses, stopped having cyclospora be a mandatory reporting component. That's a bad thing from a data perspective, and it's a bad thing for understanding long-term trends.
Mhm.
But FoodNet isn't really designed to detect emerging infectious diseases, and so
Mhm.
this is sort of a long-term data problem. And like if the sort of concerns that climate change and increased flooding and things like that are increasing cyclospora counts, not having good data for that is going to be very bad for collecting those long-term trends, understanding what is normal, and being able to quantify that. But I don't actually think that like a food net system that had cyclospora as one of the mandatory reportable diseases would have necessarily caught this any faster. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think the real answer for why everyone is behind, including the CDC, on this is just everybody is at this point spread a little bit too thin.
Yeah. Well, something I saw that was really interesting was so the U.S. had not had a cyclospore outbreak. sometimes they'll have cyclospora, but it came from food that was imported. So you're like, oh, it's
Yeah.
just from that other country and they have a hygiene problem. We had our first domestically started cyclospora outbreak in 2018, and we've just been having more and more and more of them ever since. So this has been a building problem in the US for close to a decade now. And for most of that time, all of our attention of like, oh no, there's a new pathogen has been on COVID. Rightly
Yeah.
so. Like COVID is a big problem. That was actively killing people, unlike cyclospora so far. And so when there was funding, attention, energy to put on new pathogens, it all went to COVID. And so
Yeah.
this has been simmering in the background while all that was going on over multiple administrations. And the FDA actually has a document of like, here's all the stuff we need to do. Here's the stuff we've been able to do. Someone please fund us. And they've been, hollering about that for close to a decade now. And so that's kind of sobering to watch. But that's the state of things is like you kind of assume that when there's an outbreak, like they call the ET guys and they come and like swoop in and do that. We don't have ET guys on the
Mm.
payroll.
Yeah. And importantly, that those people were doing something else when they did come and swoop in. Like your EIS officers or the folks at the CDC, they had whatever they were working on. It's a very common pattern in public health that unfortunately occurs, which is that you'll have a big spooky outbreak that's very sort of cool is the wrong word, but very cool. Tons of funding will come. Everyone goes, okay, we're great. Public health is going to be funded forever. U.S. News and World Report will do like epidemiologist is the career of the future. And then once that goes away, the funding immediately disappears. So I was working with some folks on antibiotic resistance. And then sort of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa occurred, and we all shifted to Ebola. And then so antibiotic resistance got neglected for about a year, and then everybody sort of went back to it. And so or similarly for COVID, since I work mostly on healthcare associated infections, there were some emerging things we were worried about, and then suddenly COVID came along, and the answer is everybody's working on COVID all the time. People who were working on those diseases got retasked to help with COVID stuff, et cetera. And now, we're coming back and going, okay, where did we leave off? And the answer is the pathogen didn't stop doing things in that time. And so, yeah, there are some things where this sort of boom and bust in both funding and attention cycle for public health makes addressing things that are slow burn but getting worse very difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I was like, oh, thanks, Dragon Dad. He said, if only we had an experienced person in charge of NC agriculture. Well, the good news is no one's really in charge of NC agriculture. Farmers are free to be good at our job at any time. So this is part of why we do this is, like as a small farmer and as someone who's worked in food safety, I feel like there's just a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of like fear and paranoia. And we need to make sure that people, like, regardless of what our role is in life, here's what we know, here's what we can put out to people. We can invite an epidemiologist to say more. And like somebody mentioned, I'm seeing conspiracy streamers blame human waste fertilizer. That's, as conspiracy theories go, that's pretty tame. At least it's not a space laser. But
yeah, at least that one is like, yeah, no, if that was being used, that could happen. Versus, yeah,
yeah,
that the
the
Illuminati
one thing I'll
are
point out about
poisoning
any
us.
kind of manure, human or otherwise, is it's really heavy for the amount of nutrients that are actually in it. So, and I know this is kind of happening, or the conspiracy theory about it is happening because fertilizer prices are up and there was an outbreak. Therefore, they must be the same thing, right? That one must have caused the other. Manure just doesn't have that much nutrients per pound. And so, I mean, it's very common to use manure if you have a source of it pretty close to the farm because you've got to fill up trucks and then unload them like multiple times. I've done it. It's a pain in the butt. Compared to synthetic fertilizers, there's a reason that synthetic fertilizers got so popular. Whether or not you agree with all the consequences of that, whole nother discussion, but there is a reason they got popular. And so the idea that if you have human feces close enough to the farm to be worth hauling it, the fact that the big source of human feces is close enough to the farm is already the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, if the poop is close enough to be worth hauling to the farm, it is, as we've mentioned, sort of close enough that, yes, if you have heavy rainfall, it is also close enough to the farm, or, flooding or things like that are all, yeah. If you've got human feces proximate to produce, that is the problem. The exact nature of how it gets there is interesting, but the solution is not to have human feces near the food.
Yeah. You've heard of space lasers, now think of diarrhea drones. Thank you. Now I will.
I would prefer not to think of diarrhea drones. Thank you very much. Though they would
Well,
keep
if
me
you can
employed.
live. Yeah, so that's the rundown. TLDR, cyclospora. So far, like again, there's diarrheas that will kill you because they'll also nuke your kidneys and cause you to bleed out through your guts. Cyclospora so far just poop. Knock on wood. We're gonna keep it that
Yeah.
way. This is mostly just about if you have diarrhea that doesn't go away, go to a doctor. Tell them you
Go
think
to a
it might be
doctor.
cyclospora. And if you're got a health situation where you really need to not get that, cook it.
Yeah. Some people
Uh,
have asked about canned vegetables.
mhm.
The process of canning involves cooking because there's all kinds of things that will grow happily in cans if you don't cook them, and they will kill you. So yeah, canned vegetables are inherently cooked, which is why they're soft and you know
Yep.
feel like they've been cooked.
Why they look boiled soft. Someone asked if we switch to cookable vegetables, won't that motivate lettuce growers to be more careful? Yes. Funny question. So, funny story. There have been a lot of outbreaks in lettuce, and as a result, the lettuce industry has gotten like more and more and more hygiene standards. So they're having outbreaks less often. It appears that when they do have them, they might again. We're not 100% for sure it's actually coming from lettuce. That's just like a well, a lot of people who got sick ate lettuce. Well, everybody eats lettuce. Might not be the cause. We're looking at lettuce as the cause right now. Um, Compared to where we were a decade ago, 2 decades ago, lettuce is having a lot fewer problems because they've been forced to tighten up the hygiene so much. And this is something I'll hear all the time when any other food product we're like, you need to do this or that for food safety, and they'll go, well, the vegetable people are allowed to cause outbreaks with no. Oh no, we're not. You wouldn't. You have no idea what they're making us go through. We Yeah, we have to test our water. Uh, Especially if it's from a pond, you really should not be using pond water on anything. You know, like if it's, I'm trying to think of an example, something that you're only going to eat cooked. Potatoes. If you're doing potatoes, the water can be a little bit mucky. Nobody's eating potatoes raw. But if you're doing lettuce, if you're doing strawberries, if you're doing herbs, basil, anything that's close to the ground and eaten raw, you better believe like there is some crazy stuff going on with the water quality. We are not allowed to use land that has animals grazing on it in the last at least year. I'm using an acre that's on a ranch, and I had to like double check with the guy who owns that ranch. Are you sure no cows have gotten into that patch? It's 1 acre, so it's too small for them to bother fencing off to have cattle on it. So they haven't had anything other than deer wandering through it occasionally. But I was like, if there's been cows on that in the last year, you have to tell me. you
Mhm.
know, you would be really surprised the amount of hoops that folks who grow produce have to jump through because we don't. Those of us who are paying attention anyway know that it's possible to cause problems, and we really don't want to do that. Especially when if it's leafy greens. If you're trying to sell lettuce to a major buyer, they will not take it from you unless you can prove a whole lot of things. And this kind of goes to show, like, even if an outbreak like this can come from just like, oh, we forgot to put toilet paper in the bathrooms for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Like that's the level of slip up that can cause an issue this big. It could have also been a much more serious problem. They could have used dirty water or something, but this literally can come from just like a few days of being soft on the bathrooms program on a farm. So that's why we're like this. Very nervous people. I think that ought to do us. I think we've been in. We're
All
about. Oh,
right.
we're hitting the 50-minute mark. So,
Yeah.
um, well, I think we've been through what we actually know at this point.
Yeah. The answer is we don't know a lot, but we are trying.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, like if you're immunocompromised, just cook veggies for the time being because we suspect this kind of lettuce may be responsible, but we don't know for sure. We haven't like totally tacked that down yet. It's a suspect. It's not a convict yet, and there might be like there's so much cyclospora going on. There could be multiple outbreaks going on. So yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, this has been good. Thanks for coming on. I just
Thank you for
appreciate
having me.
folks who Of course, yeah. I appreciate folks who like again, I'm a farmer. I do a lot of social media. I have to split my time between a lot of things. So it's always good to have somebody who's like really focused on how do we know what we know? What do we do about
Yeah.
it? So thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Is there anywhere people should come find you on social media for more if they want that?
So yeah, if you have questions, want to chat, etc., I'm on Blue Sky at Germs and Numbers. And if you want to email me, because I am a faculty member at a land grant university, so public outreach is part of my job. I'm at eric.lofgren@wsu.edu.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been lovely, and I hope this was. I apologize to both guests and viewers about the technical difficulties. I have another live stream later today, and this was my guinea pig round, and hopefully we'll get it done the first time next time.
Outstanding.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks everyone for coming to get more info, and thanks Dr. Lofgren for helping us out. And happy Friday, everyone.
My pleasure. Happy Friday.
Enjoy. Bye.